Hey, and good evening. Thank you for your patience. Welcome to After Service. Took us an extra minute to kind of get the technical pieces dialed in. I think it had something to do with the rhinoceros that ran through Pastor Brian's office just as we were trying to go live.
We we're getting ready for my in-laws to stay at our house for a little while because my mother-in-law is having surgery.
Oh gosh.
Right, and so where I normally do it, I can't do it right now. So I decided to do it here at the office. And so I got some things set up, but at the last moment something tipped and every connection fell apart. All of them. So I'm like, "Oh no." Oh.
What a tenuous grasp we have on these things. Well,
And then not only that, but and part of that though is I touched my computer to straighten it and I turned it off. That's why the feed completely, Joe, went down on my side. It's like, oh yeah.
well, I'm like, I'm sorry.
It happens.
It
It's
happens,
fine.
and I appreciate that both of us have enough of a sense of humor that when that kind of stuff happens, it's, these are things,
Yeah.
this is the nature of, actually, what I see is God acting in these things in a way that says, just in the event that you
Just
thought
in the
you
event.
know what's going on and that you have some measure of control, you're wrong. Now I'm going to have to address you keep moving your camera on me. Now I'm going to have to address,
Yeah.
get it,
Sorry.
get it dialed in a little better here. Let's see.
Now I don't know where this line came from. Somewhere, but it's the line that goes something like all control is an illusion.
Yeah, I'll go with
That's,
that.
yeah, you think you're in control, but you're really not. Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know. I'd have to try and find that quote. Maybe someone in the who watches us could Google that quote and see where it's from. It's probably from some pagan philosopher or something. I don't know.
Well, just because something isn't founded in Christianity doesn't mean that there's not value in it. But
Absolutely.
so you could,
People
yeah, there's
people
wisdom out
think
there.
that if it's not in the Bible, it can't be true. Well, half the proverbs in the book of Proverbs can be found nearly word for word in Near East wisdom literature.
Yeah, yeah.
Wisdom is wisdom.
It's amazing the number of quotes that are attributed to like the Bible that are like Ben Franklin,
Oh yeah.
right? And like, oh, that's in the Bible. All right, well, let's look that
God
up.
helps those who help themselves.
Right, and it's wisdom, but maybe not in the Bible. And also, like, there's very little math in the Bible. I mean, there's,
Very little math.
there's a census in there, but a few censuses, censi. But math is a thing.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. They do a lot of estimations.
yeah.
So
Anyways, all this to say, we're really glad you're watching or listening or whatever that circumstance this evening. I hope you're staying cool. We're getting ready to hit that kind of second heat wave of the year. I just went out about an hour ago to pick up soccer stuff because I'm helping coach a soccer team. And I realized that wearing jeans and a long sleeve shirt is a poor choice when it's 101 degrees outside.
we took Dawson to the post office to deliver some of the cards that they're selling. And he got in the car and he realized, it's probably not a good idea to wear sweats and a sweatshirt today.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an
But he
idea.
hadn't gone outside.
Yeah. Well, and I find that it's almost, okay, let's move on. Okay. we
Yeah, we got to
should,
move on.
we should not talk
Yeah,
about the
I've
weather.
wasted enough of our time. So,
Well, talk to me. Give us your elevator speech, and then let's talk about the sermon.
it's hard to give. I realize when I've communicated a sermon that's unclear, when I can't give you a good elevator speech. You asked me at the beginning of before the service Sunday, so what's it about? And I rambled and I couldn't really say it. And I actually had one person after the service said, that they leaned over to their partner and said, "Do you know what he's talking about?"
Oh man. Okay.
I know. I was like, now some of that is because this is pretty deep concepts, but some of it is I didn't communicate clear. So let me tell you one thought that I had that I thought was really good. We're talking about Jesus saying, "Anyone who wants to come after me must take up his cross and follow me." And one of the big thoughts that I'm thinking through with this is, we think that the cross is that phrase is kind of a moralistic idea, that it means you have to live a good life, or maybe it's that, you need to endure the suffering in your life or something like that. And I'm not sure that that's what that means, in part because we don't appreciate what a cross meant to them. It's a little closer to us saying, take up your guillotine and follow me. Take up your electric chair and follow me. It's an execution device. It's not meant to be something it's not a torture device only. It's an execution device. So you don't get off the cross alive. And so from that is like, okay, my thought had to do with, Paul uses this analogy that we have died with Christ and rise in order to rise again. Romans 6, I quoted it on Sunday. So I think it has something to do with a union with Christ, and it has to do with this, on one sense, this mystical union that his death is your death, his resurrection will be your death. And there's this utter abandonment and trust in him that goes way beyond morality. It has more to do with your core identity and your will. And then the other part is the daily dying to what you want in order to live for him, which is what Paul is getting at when he says, "For me to live is Christ." So that gives you a sense of what I'm talking about.
And it's understandable that it's a difficult idea to communicate, because 2,000 plus years later, we're still trying to figure it out. What does it mean to live for Christ? What does it mean to die to your own life so that you can live for him? Mm-hmm. That we really struggle with that idea. I mean, I think part of that is sin. Part of that is a lack of wisdom, a lack of maturity. There's all kinds of things that are wrapped up in that.
Yeah.
But I think, one of the things that really struck me as much as anything, and we talked about this before the service, is, as you mentioned, the idea of taking up your cross, that we tend to throw that around kind of like we do the word awesome. It has been so diluted that we don't understand the gravity of what it represents. So when we say, "Oh, it's just my cross to bear," immediately I think of Eeyore complaining that he's had a bad day, right? It's become vernacular that says, woe is me, life is hard, rather than this is really significant. Mm-hmm. This is a life-changing thing. I am agreeing that by taking up my cross, there's a lot of things, my ambition, my desires, my wants, whatever, they have to be set aside so that I can be with Christ, so that I can live for Christ, as Christ.
And, this comes right on the heels of of Jesus affirming that he is the Christ, and then saying that he must suffer and die on a cross, and Peter being shocked by this. And so we miss the shocking nature of it. And the other thought I had along with this is just this whole concept of death that we've talked a little bit about way in the past. I don't know if we've done it on the podcast. We probably have. But when you die, you do in fact set aside all of that. Your ambition is over at that point.
Yeah.
Your Your wants are done, and in a moral sense, there's no more trying to be good. You either lived a good life or you didn't. It's over. And so one of the I think the image is to follow Jesus is the metaphor of dying. You're dying. So all of what that means is I'm done with this world. I'm done with all of the ways that the world does its thing, so I can follow Jesus, be like him.
Not to be morbid, but one of the things that both you and I recognized, because our our fathers died around the same time. I mean, within about 5-6 months of each other. And one of the things that we talked about was the idea that when that happens, a lot of things in terms of priority start to fall in line. The things that kept us up at night, that occupied us, are like, who cares?
Nothing.
Who cares about that? That is such a minor thing. Why did I ever waste my time on that? So when we think about if we are truly dying to, in this regard, that we're talking about here, there's a freedom to that that says, really, you don't have to worry about all that garbage, and you don't need to worry about it. This is what's important, and that was what was important to us with our dads. Was like, listen, the main thing that was important is eternity and Christ, and if that's there, the rest of the things are just going to fall in place.
Nothing else, right? It's not that you ignored those things generally. I mean, because you had to eat, you had to you do stuff, but they just became so low on the priority list that at best they were just a means to an end, to be able to be with people, to connect with people, to all of these kinds of things. I'm trying to think back to those moments, and another thing, like what you had said, it's like when this happens, the world stops, and it's like, why isn't anybody paying attention to this significant moment?
Yeah.
Jesus is risen. Why isn't anybody paying attention to how big of a deal this is?
Yeah, it's the idea that this is so significant. Shouldn't everybody stop and acknowledge it? And why don't they?
Why don't they?
Yeah, that to me was a big struggle, and I remember being at a service where a spouse of a member of our congregation had passed, and we were doing a celebration of life, and sitting there and feeling and just crying. I didn't know this person. I don't think I'd ever met him, but I got to experience who they were through the celebration of life, and there was a jealousy there that said, I wish that we had celebrated this way. So, the term celebration to me seems really important to this, because if you wake up, and I do this sometimes at 2 or 3 in the morning, and something is really bugging you, if you put it within this context, it's like that we're talking about right here. It's like, okay, it's not that it's nothing. It's just not as important as I have made it.
Yeah.
And if we can set that aside and focus on the things that are important, the other things just fall in place. When I was maybe 12 years old, I remember the faith my great-grandmother had, how important that was to her comfort in knowing Christ and where she was going. It was really inspirational to me. And so when I was scared, as it was dark and it was quiet in the house, and I woke up in the middle of the night, I would think about her, the comfort that she felt. And I went, if she's comfortable, then and she has this relationship with Christ, then I'm going to be comfortable too.
Wow.
And that it made a huge difference for me. And, part of it was, I was a kid and, I had a very active imagination, but there was something very grounded about knowing that if I focused on the most important thing, that everything else would fall into place appropriately.
Appropriately.
Yeah.
Right. Because again, it doesn't mean you, and this is when you grieve to a place where it's not healthy, where you literally stop living, and you don't shower, you don't eat, you isolate, and those things aren't good things, but they just become not the focus of your life.
Right.
So
right. It falls to the side, and sometimes for me it exposes idols to me, where I go, oh, I see, I've really been focusing on something that is not the least bit important, and I've made it more important than it deserves to be. And that's kind of, I'm going to use the word invigorating, to kind of go, whoa, wow, I don't need to worry about that. It's kind of exciting. It is.
To try and live your life with that sense that, because our world presses so hard that so many things are super important, including, whether we're talking about media or culture or friends and family. And it's like, it's really hard to keep this perspective of that I've died with Christ. I'm in that process, which it's not a downer, because which we should probably make sure we get back to, but we're going to get the resurrection too.
Right.
It's not just I'm dying, but I'm doing it because I'm going to resurrect, dying to rise, and all the joy that comes from there. But it is really hard to have that perspective.
Here, I'm going to use an example that is going to sound really shallow, but hopefully it resonates with some people. And that is, if you've ever gone camping or gone someplace where you have no cell coverage. For us, it was like when our power was out or whatever, right? All of a sudden you're like, hey, there's some really basic things that are important. And me playing that stupid game on my phone to make sure I get credit for being on, those stupid things that drive us. And I mean stupid. But for some reason we've elevated those to something of importance. It steals our time, and or even if we voluntarily say, I'm just going to set my phone aside, I'm not going to check emails or anything. There's a level of discomfort that occurs for a period of time, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, this feels so good. It feels so good to not worry about these things. I think about that with our 24 hours of prayer. It's like, what am I going to pray for an hour? In the first 5 minutes, you're like, and then all of a sudden you're like, thank you, God, for this peace. Thank you, God, just that I can be here and we can have a real conversation, and for carving this time, dedicating this time to you. I know it's kind of a minor.
It's a good illustration. Yeah, because it's like, or another one is it's the running one. That the first little bit it's hard, but then you push through and what is it, the wall or something like that they call it, and suddenly you kind of get into a rhythm. I'm not a runner.
Well, let me tell you what it is. So
go for it.
When you first start to run or any aerobic activity, but specifically running, your body goes into a fight versus flight mode. Usually it's in the first 2 or 3 minutes, where it says, what are you doing? And it goes into kind of a panic mode. And you push through that, and all of a sudden your body's like, oh, we're doing this. Okay. And you get into flow. You stay in that for a period of time, and then you get to the point where you do hit a wall where your body is like, what am I doing? And it's where you shift from carbohydrates as your primary source of energy and into fat. And that switch, your body goes, where's the easy stuff? Oh, the easy stuff is gone. Now I need to lean into the long range stuff. So there's some wonderful analogies in there in terms of carbohydrates is living in the moment because it's easy.
Yeah.
But when you switch over, when you hit that wall and you switch over, then you're living for what's your long-term goal? I can do this forever because, I am prepared for this. But until you hit that point, I mean, there's a moment when you hit that point where you're like, I can't do this. I don't have the capacity to handle this.
Yeah.
Lean into it. And on the other side. Yeah.
And I wanted to push this because I had a thought is like, okay, now, but let's talk about this in terms of death. Now, not everybody dies peacefully. Yeah. I've been around enough that it don't. But there are those who get to a moment where they know it's going to happen and they know what's going to lie, and they just kind of let go.
Yeah.
They relax and they just go with it. And that's a little bit similar. If you know where you're going on the other side, you can just go, all the other stuff doesn't matter. I was thinking about my dad when he finally came to the point where he resolved that he's going to pass because he was on hospice, there wasn't a struggle. And there was all this other stuff, like the Olympics meant nothing to him.
Right.
People meant something. Conversations meant things to him. So priorities massively shifted, and then he could just go with it. And I think that's a little bit with Christianity in this, is because you don't have an option to die, which I want to come back to after you comment on what I just said. We don't have an option, but go ahead.
No, I really appreciate that because, gosh, there are a lot of things that we as Christians prop up in front of us and say, this is important. This is, and in many ways I find that it ends up being more of a barrier to the Great Commission than it does anything else, where if we die to ourselves, and then there's something very inviting about somebody who is incredibly vulnerable in that. And so if you allow yourself to just, I think about, I'm not even, I'll talk to you after the podcast.
Okay.
Nobody will get it except for you and me. So
then tell me later.
Yeah.
But the other part of it, I was thinking about this, is he said, you must take up your cross. It's not an option for Christians whether or not they die. This is not, well, you might do it. No, he'll kill you, and there's a couple of verses that talk about, I'm thinking about the one in 2 Corinthians chapter 3, where the Spirit kills, that we need to die, and because you can't be resurrected until you die. And so you have to go through the process, and it's scary. Death is scary. It's scary because you don't know what's there. And so the only thing you can do is hold on to the hand who's taking you through it. And we're trusting that Jesus, who's been through this journey before, knows what he's doing and will get us through the veil to the other side. And so we got to trust that. But we have to do this. We have to die for our sin with Jesus, so we raise.
And I think, gosh, we get so distracted and so, I don't have the words, but we get so focused on the wrong things that we lose track of where comfort is. And I'm absolutely there as somebody who's distracted. And if you think about, Vanessa and I talk about this sometimes, when there's distress, when we stop and reflect on all the times that God has provided in the miraculous ways, that there's comfort there, that if we, one of my favorite words, luxuriate into, here, I'm going to open up my hand. I've been holding things. I'm just going to do that,
Yeah.
Just
that surrender, that letting go.
Yeah. Gosh, when you, and that's like sleep, which is often an analogy for death, right? But
A little child fighting it, fighting it, fighting it.
I remember, I think I was 7 years old, maybe 8, Christmas. I was so excited for Christmas. I could not sleep. I could not sleep. I could not sleep. And I'm just like, I'm crying. I'm frustrated. And then I was asleep. We spend so much time fighting, so much energy that goes into fighting, that when we surrender, all of a sudden it's like, this was so much easier than than I expected, and could have been even easier if I hadn't fought so hard.
And Hebrews 12 says that Jesus did this for the joy set before him. That on the other side of this, the surrender, this death, is joy. It's this delight. I like the thinking of it in terms of a dance where we're just we've just let go, and we can just go and live our lives with joy and with freedom and serving people without worrying about ourselves and our own needs, because my needs are already taken care of, and I can just live.
Dancing is such a great analogy, especially if you consider in our in our culture, the male leads, the female follows, but we're the bride.
We're the bride,
and our job is to follow. And there's a certain, no, I'm not gonna, it's like, I can't submit to the person who's leading the dance because that means I'm weak or something. Or you can trust that they have your best interest, and they will guide you where you need to go. And maybe it's like when you're teaching your kids how to do something, sometimes like how to hit a baseball or something like that, you put your hands on their hands and you're like, let me show you. No, don't fight me here. Don't let me just show you what this feels like, right? Once you understand what it feels like, you're like, oh. But you have to be willing to surrender to that force.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, we're pushing, and we gain nothing. We're not learning anything. We're just falling. We're making it so much more difficult.
It reminds me of this song by Rich Mullins, "Hold Me, Jesus," where there's this line that says, "I'd rather fight you for what I don't really want than to take what I need that you give." We fight for stupid stuff rather than just relaxing and trusting him.
Yeah. It's a big deal. And I feel this very personally. I don't feel like I'm a person who is trying to control things. I think I do a pretty good job of understanding what I can control and what I can't control, and letting go of those things. But I know I can do a better job of recognizing things that I could let go of, that I don't need to control. That like, I think I have the power to influence this, or don't.
That's hard for me.
I know.
I see the hard part for me on control is I have such a sense of responsibility. I see what, if I was a little bit more proactive, if I did this or that just a little bit more different, then I can make a difference. I can make it better for this person, and it can be better. I can do it. And it's like, not always.
That's why it's great to be a parent, because you realize the best thing I can do here is to not control it.
That's so hard.
Yeah. Or think about our role. We're over time, but whatever. But think about our role in trying to bring people to Christ, especially people that we're close to, that are important to us, and we're pushing and we're pushing and we're pushing, and it's going nowhere. That's a point in the dance where we have to say, God, you're leading the dance.
Yeah.
Not me. I'll let you take this, and to understand that it's okay to give over that to the Spirit.
Yeah.
And let the Spirit take care of that. It doesn't mean we surrender control necessarily. It doesn't mean we say we abdicate all of our responsibility to do our best in certain situations. It's just saying
that I can do whatever I want and it means nothing what I do. No,
Right.
that's not what we're saying.
No, what we're saying is I have done what I believe that I should do, and I need to allow the Spirit to take care of the rest of this.
Right. And that's what following Jesus is. You do what you can do, you follow after him, you be faithful, and that's enough.
Yeah.
It's enough. Do your best. And best is more than enough.
Yeah.
And this is a little bit more about what take up your cross and follow me means. We're past time.
We are. Thank you, folks, for listening. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Hey, Jen, nice to see you. Jen is our only listener this evening.
Oh, other people will listen. Jan will listen at some point.
Yeah. So I appreciate you all taking the time to listen to our conversation this evening. I will not be there this Sunday, so I hope you guys have an excellent. There's an excellent message. I will be accountable, and I will listen to the message despite the fact that I'm not there. I promise.
Deal.
And you can hold me to that.
Okay.
All right. All right. Have a good night, sir. Have a good night, everybody who's listening. Take care of yourselves.
Take care.